the long-awaited SLIA guide video. You could say the reason it's been long awaited is because the information I've given you already is quite self-explanatory as to how to do the SLIA. So you should have a guide booklet already that lists how to lay out the IA. It gives you example SLIAs, good example SLIAs, and this checklist that you see in front of you on the screen now. So obviously each individual investigation is different, so each one is going to be marked uniquely in that sense, but they all follow the same checklist and the same marking criteria. So if we look at some of the basics on the checklist here, so we have criterion A, the supporting documents. Now this is very easy to gain marks on. If you look at some of the checklists, there are 3 to 5 supporting documents, so I've advised all of you to have 5 sources of information. Okay, now a lot of these are going to be on the internet, and because the SLIA is what we call a backwards looking question, so it's a question looking at something that has happened in the past for a particular business, and we're looking at trying to analyze why that particular thing happened, or whether that particular thing that happened was a positive or negative move for the business. And so the sources, a lot of them are articles published in newspapers, which you can gain access to on the internet. So mainly it's secondary research, but you could also have primary research. Maybe you want to do a survey to customers of that particular company that you're looking at, and you want to ask them their opinions on whatever it is you're investigating from the past. You could also have an interview with management or senior people at that company if you're lucky enough to have good connections, or you have bothered them enough to get them to respond to your request for an interview. Okay, but the main source of information is usually secondary research, and that is what I've encouraged all of you to do. So basically you are going to list 3 to 5 supporting documents after the introduction. So you're going to list what they are, and then you're going to reprint the 3 to 5, hopefully those 5 supporting documents in the appendix. Once you've finished the IA, the appendix is at the back where you gather all of the sources of information you have used for the main body of the IA. So the documents cover a range of ideas and views. That's the second thing on the checklist. So hopefully you have, if you're using a lot of articles from the internet, articles that show positive effects and articles that show negative effects on the business, to give you a good range of arguments. The other thing is to try and make sure that the sources are quite reliable. Okay, they're not written by a poor tabloid newspaper, but there's been some reasonable studies and there's been some reasonable research by the author that makes the source quite reliable, or as reliable as possible. The third one here, the supporting documents are contemporary in nature, written within the last 2 years. That's the key there, that it's recent information. You don't want to be looking at a particular business from 10, 15 years ago, something they may have done 10, 15 years ago. You want to be looking at something recent, okay? And so the articles are recent as well. So they're more relevant of the times. Here, the fourth one, the relevant parts of the supporting documents are highlighted. So in the appendix, you will highlight the main sources within the article that you use to build your arguments in the main body of the IA. Now that might be quite a lot of the article, might be the majority of the article, but make sure you highlight the relevant parts that you've referred to. The documents are relevant to the issue or problem being examined. Okay, so each document you've used should be of relevance to the company and should be helping you to build a decent argument for and against your question in the IA. Given that you can only have a maximum of 5 documents, I'm sure you're all making sure that each of those documents is as relevant as it can be and is as helpful as it can be in helping you answer your IA question. Different types of documents are included. Okay, so we have not just articles. Okay, maybe you have a company report. Maybe you have a journal entry. Maybe you have an interview. Maybe you have questionnaires as well as the articles. Maybe you have a particular study carried out on that business, not just a newspaper article. So we're trying to show a reasonable range of sources. If I look at an example one then, here, so this particular IA was carried out on the company Woolworths. Most of you are probably, well, maybe aware of Woolworths, but they went out of business a few years ago, so maybe some of you haven't heard of them. So this one, again, backwards looking question: what caused Woolworths Group PLC to enter administration? Okay, so what led up to them eventually going out of business? So here we've got the word count. Remember, it's got to be below 1,500 words, so that's perfect. So this is the front page. Then you put obviously the centre name, DAA, the centre number, your candidate name and number, and then we get into the table of contents. So make sure you've got a table of contents. So procedure, what you did. So the sources of information that you used, the introduction. You could have the introduction first and have the procedure, which means the sources of information used, second. And then you want to get straight into analyzing and mixing in all of the relevant information and data you gained from those sources in the procedure. And you want to get straight into that, into the analysis, because you haven't got that many words to play with. So you want to analyze as much as you can arguments for and against your question, or in this case, you know, as many arguments as you can build as to what caused Woolworths to go into administration. And then ultimately you want to come to a conclusion. So maybe what was the most significant factors or factor that caused Woolworths to go into administration? Or if you're looking at a question, I know a lot of you are looking at analyzing whether or not a particular growth strategy for business X has been successful or not. So you might conclude overall, maybe in the short term it wasn't successful, but in the long term it will be successful. Or in the short term it wasn't successful, it was successful in the short term, but in the long term it will prove to be a failure. So that might be an idea for your conclusion. And evaluation, this is where you want to bring in your critical thinking. So what any particular factors that you could see maybe in your research that made it unique, in the sense that maybe there was certain limitations to the data that you researched and that you used. Maybe there was biased. Maybe this then maybe the article was biased, maybe the author was biased in favor or against the company, and so maybe this has caused your research to be questionable. Okay, so you're making judgments and you're critically thinking about your own research and what might have influenced your conclusion. Okay, so you're bringing in critical thinking. And then the bibliography, just listing all of your sources in the correct manner, and then your supporting documents, or as you could call it, the appendix, which basically lists in full, reprinted, all of your documents that you used, the 5 sources. So you see here the procedure, a very wide range. Okay, they only had 4, but it was such a good range that they only really needed 4. Okay, so they've got an article. They've got two articles here. They've got the annual report from Woolworths, and they've got some primary research, a survey carried out with Woolworths customers. Okay, then they go straight into the introduction. Okay, now here, the only thing they haven't done that well is to reference where they're getting their ideas. So the introduction here, they have referenced a little bit, but not enough. Okay, they've got some data here, but what I'd like to see is if they're introducing, so they're introducing the idea that Woolworths has entered administration, and they're introducing some facts and figures here. But it would be nice if they referenced where they got these facts and figures in full. But this is setting the scene in the introduction. So this is setting the topic. So they're basically introducing the topic and why they're looking at it. In this last sentence here, this commentary will analyze the causes behind Woolworths' administration using a SWOT analysis, focusing on their gearing and return on capital employed ratios. So these ratios are linked to the balance sheet and a Boston matrix and the profit and loss account, sorry, and a Boston matrix. Now you don't have to actually do this. You'll have to list what theory you're using. You can just bring the theory in as you do it. It can't harm to do it if you want to, but again, we must be concerned with the word count to make sure we don't go over the word count. Okay, then they go straight into the analysis. Now what's good here is that they have mixed in some graphical data as well. Okay, so you want some what we call illustrative material, maybe some pie charts coming out of your, maybe you did a survey, maybe some graphs to help you show more clearly what is happening. So this one is a graph showing the gearing ratio of the company. Don't worry if you don't know what gearing is yet. This is obviously just linked to this particular question. But most of the questions, if not all the questions that have been set for the SLIAs this year, won't involve this ratio analysis. Okay, so instantly they're using theory, okay, and then mixing in the theory to explain certain data that they found in their research in one of their supporting documents. And they're building an argument from it. So here from the graph, it is clear that Woolworths' gearing has been increasing since 2005. Growth continues and then peaks in 2008. However, a firm that is highly geared is considered more risky. Supply. So this is theory as well. So they're using theory and they're applying it to Woolworths' situation. So we know from the theory with gearing that highly geared companies are more risky or more at risk, and so this links to Woolworths' data here. So the question is, what caused Woolworths to take on this huge amount of debt, and why did it not help them develop their entertainment side of the business? To address the underlying causes to Woolworths' administration, a SWOT analysis has been made. So then they do a SWOT analysis, which is very good. Also, this does not count in the word count. Maybe if you write too much, they will count it in the word count, and so maybe you should put it in the appendix. But what they have done well is any idea that they've got, let's look at the weaknesses and the threats. They have referenced them, okay, to a source. So they haven't just made them up based on their own opinion. They have a source for where they got these ideas, such as large debt, concerned employees being demotivated. They do not own their premises, they rent, and threats, current economic conditions, negative publicity. So they have referenced most of these sources, which you need to do if you're going to do a SWOT analysis. Okay, this cuts me off for 5 seconds, so I'm going to come back with part 2 of the video.